Hey everyone, happy Independence Day weekend. I got a great video for you today. I never, ever thought I would see a triple net apartment lease. And then all of a sudden, that's all we're seeing in many of the large apartment communities throughout Omaha and Lincoln. So I wanted to bring this to your attention because it is changing the way that we model our profit structures, and it is also going to we're going to run into a conflict with the courts. I am sure of that at some point. Anyways, we're going to talk about all of that and more in today's video. Hey everyone, if we're meeting for the first time, my name is Vojchehoske and welcome to Nebraska Landlords YouTube channel, where my mission is simple, and that's simply to enhance the landlord-tenant relationship. So as I said in the opening, I'm starting to see triple net apartment leases. Yes, you heard it right. Triple net apartment leases. Now, I was actually taken back a little bit because my lease is 33 pages. However, I got my hands on an apartment community lease here. It is 44 pages and it's legal size. Now, I will be honest, a lot of the language that's in this lease here really doesn't need to be in there. However, when I was reading through this, what really struck me is they've created a triple net lease, which is not common at all in the residential rental area. So first of all, what is a triple net lease? And I think it's good for me to define it. Well, first of all, a single net lease. Now let's back up here. First of all, an apartment lease is typically considered what we call a gross lease. And that is the tenant pays a flat monthly rent and then they're responsible for their own utilities. A single net lease is where the tenant is responsible to pay a base rent plus the property taxes. A double net lease is where the tenant has to pay the rent, the taxes, and property insurance. And then a triple net lease is rent, taxes, insurance, and then typically maintenance. Now, some people will say that if you include utilities in there where the tenant has to pay it, that's actually a single net lease, but that's for a different debate here. But I do want to read a couple of provisions that this particular 44-page lease includes in their lease agreement that does make this a triple net lease. So there is a base rent in here. The tenants do have to pay their own utilities, but there is what we call an ad valorem tax, which basically is a property tax, fees and other relevant charges, additional rent. And it says, unless otherwise prohibited by law, if during the term of this agreement, which this is a 24-month fixed expiration lease, if during the term of this agreement, any locality, city or state or federal government imposes upon us, the management company, any fee, charge, or tax which is related to or charged by the number of occupants or by the apartment unit itself, such as we are charged a fee, charged a tax based upon your use or occupancy of the apartment, we may add this additional charge as additional rent during the term of the lease contract with 30 days notice, written notice to you. After this written notice, the amount or the approximate amount of the charge will be included in your monthly rent, and you agree to pay as additional rent the amount of the charge that we indicate, which this charge could include a fine, property tax, a fee imposed upon us. And then they go on, it's a lot longer, but they go on to describe like if there is a rental registration fee or a unit inspection fee and that type of stuff. Now, this is going to be interesting because first of all, this is one of the elements of a net lease because ad valorem tax is included in here, which is property taxes. Now, we went through this in the mid-90s where a whole group of landlords tried to add property taxes, or at least what they added in their leases is language to raise the rent midway through or at any part during a fixed expiration lease period. Let's say a 1-year lease, 6 months into it, the property taxes go up. There was language in there where the landlord could up the rent to cover that. The courts in the mid 90s, the judges just threw this stuff out. So now we do have a whole bunch of new judges, and a lot of the old judges are leaving. I do think that this is a potential legal hurdle for these management companies that are doing this. And I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying that I do think that there could be some legal challenges, especially when legal aid and whatnot get a hold of this. So anyways, it's interesting. I find it very fascinating. Number 2, another fascinating addition to this 44 legal sized lease that I have in front of me is the provision, and it adds into that whole triple net lease theory of mine, and that is it says that the resident will be billed $10.75 per month as a facilities charge. And then it goes on to say that the tenant can certainly get their own renter's insurance, and that, their personal belongings aren't covered by this. But they call it a facilities charge, which is interesting, but it's under the insurance provision of the lease. It's a little bit confusing here. I think what they're trying to do is disguise a fee, a facilities fee, into the lease that actually is paying for the property, the owner's property insurance, because it's in the insurance provision of the lease. It goes on to say in the same provision that the tenant has to, or they need to procure renter's insurance because their personal belongings aren't covered. But they call it a facilities charge, and I find that interesting because further into the lease, like on page 35 or 40, the lease specifically requires the tenant to pay, and I want to get it right here, $11.75 per month as a common area maintenance / utilities fee. And it goes on to explain what this is, and it basically is, in the multi-unit, in the common areas, we have electricity that's got to be paid, and carpets that have to be vacuumed in clean, and trash taken out, and all of that stuff. And this tenant that signed this lease is paying their pro rata share of the property's expenses. So what we have here is property tax, ad valorem tax provision. We have a facilities charge, which really is the insurance charge. And then we have a common area maintenance / utility fee that the tenant has to pay. Now, this is all in addition to the lease agreement. Then it goes one step further, where they require the tenant to pay their share of the trash fee. Obviously, multi-units, they're going to have a dumpster, and there's going to be a fee associated with that. In this case, it's $4.75 per month per resident, not per unit, per resident. $4.75 per resident to reimburse the property owner for trash expenses. 44 pages. This is actually the largest, most comprehensive, I wouldn't say most comprehensive, but the largest residential apartment lease, triple net lease, that I've ever seen. And it's on legal size paper. So thought you might find that interesting. Anyways, everybody have a great Independence Day weekend. I'll see you in the next video.